This is emergencyFD Storyline.
You should always be training, always be doing stuff. As long as you're on the job, you always have to be a student of the game because everything's always changing. Whether it's building, construction, tactics, whatever. We're always trying to improve on things, and if you're not keeping up with that, then you need to put your papers in and go do something else, especially for a job that can kill you in a second.
Firefighting is a calling, a commitment to serve others. Also, it's a commitment to serve one another within the fire family. Despite its traditions, firefighting is a lifetime of learning, training, and working hard so you can be on top of your game when duty calls. The views expressed on this program are from the guest and the host and do not necessarily represent the views of any government agency, private company, or public service. emergencyFD Storyline's focus is to tell the stories of those in the fire service and to highlight what matters to our first responders. I'm your host, Tom Mann. My guest is a second-generation firefighter. The first time I met him, I said to myself, now, that's a firefighter. He looked the part, he talked the talk, and he walked the walk. It seems to me, when you're a second-generation firefighter, you carry the traditions and the passion to serve your community and your brothers and sisters in the fire service. My guest is an active member of the Metropolis Fire Department located in Metropolis, Illinois. He's also a training officer for that department and an instructor for the Illinois Fire Service Institute. He works hard and is always learning. His father was a firefighter, and he's a firefighter. And you'll notice my guest lives with a deep passion for the job and his fellow firefighters. You could say he's a firefighter's firefighter. He is second gen, and that's our storyline. You know, there are superheroes, and there are superheroes. With me is a friend of mine that is one of those. He's actually from Metropolis, and he's one of the superheroes there, one of the real ones, outside of Superman. With me is firefighter Bobby Williams. Bobby, good to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I don't know about the superhero part.
Well, anyway, you're actually from Metropolis. You're actually Metropolis Fire Department, Metropolis, Illinois. When I moved here in this area, I was like, Metropolis, is that where Superman is? They're like, yeah, seriously, that's where it is.
No, I'd never heard that before.
Never heard that before.
No, I'm kidding.
Tell me what you do, your role.
I'm an engineer there, and I'm also the training officer for Metropolis. Last month, I celebrated my 27th year.
That's a long time.
My 30th year in the fire service this year. Always got to be a student of the game.
And it's a family thing, too. Your dad was a firefighter?
Dad, yes, I'm second generation, yes. And it's ironic because growing up, I didn't even want to be a fireman.
Dad's doing it, so I don't want to do it. Is that kind of what it was? Or
not really. No, not really. I was born in the firehouse, and it was cool going to see the guys and stuff, but I didn't have any really interest in it. Give you a little background on my father. When he got out of the military in 1964, I know he got hired on the job in 1965 in Cairo, Illinois. Was on the job there from 1965 to 1970, and then took a job as an instructor with the University of Illinois Fire Service Institute. Did that for a year traveling, and then got on full-time in Carpentersville, which there's 4 of us kids. 3 of us were born in Elgin. Because I get that a lot. It's like, well, where were you born? How did you end up down back there, in Cairo? My dad, he was a lieutenant on the engine, and a good friend of his was a lieutenant on a truck, who was born in the city and basically grew up in a firehouse. So they would go in and ride in the city all the time. And he's got quite the stories of that. Of course, back in the day, in the 70s, I mean, during what they call the war years, when a lot of the big cities were having a lot of fires back then. In 1977, he wanted to take his education experience and go back home, which my mom wanted to stay up north, but that's how I ended up growing up in Cairo.
And for those who don't know, in Illinois, we're talking about where we are. It's 6+ hours up to Chicago way, and that's basically where you're talking about where your dad was. So.
Yeah, northwest of Chicago.
Yeah, that's a big area, huge area.
Oh yeah,
a lot of tradition up there.
Lots.
Tell me a little bit about your training, your background, and how you got where you are.
Like I said, I honestly didn't have any interest in it. I took a little bit of interest in it as far as like doing the volley thing, I've not really spoken about this very much. There was a particular fire that I saw how it affected my father, where there was reported kids trapped in this house, and it was a good working fire. The outcome ended up not the same as what happened before, but I watched how everything took place and how the fireground tactics, well, I say that now, I didn't really know what the heck it was back then necessarily. That's kind of how the bug bit me, and 30 years later, here I am.
Where did you start?
I volleyed with a small department, Mound City, Illinois. I got on there. I wasn't there very long, and then I got on in Cairo, where my father retired from. That's where I really got my start. And back in the day, in the early 90s, we caught a lot of fires. Whether they were intentionally set or accidental. But when we say, as firefighters, we catch a good fire. I mean, just good workers. Back in the old days, firefighters didn't train necessarily. They got their training on the job and worked a lot of fires. And I've been was fortunate to catch a lot of fires in my younger years when I first started out, especially with my old man. He has always been very proactive on education and training. You have to train for a job that'll kill us.
Is that what kind of got your interest as far as instructing and training and doing the things that you do now? Which, tell me about that, because to me, that's one of the big things about you. When I met you, I got to know you.
I drug my feet for a long time because Dad he got hired by U of I in 1970. And I remember being a little kid, he'd take me to classes all over Southern Illinois, to the different departments that he would teach at. Getting involved in the fire service, I would go to trainings or whatever, especially when I got hired full-time in Metropolis. The reason I'm here is because of my father. Very blessed to have met a lot of really good people, had great influence, that have been my mentors along with my father. Like I said, I drug my feet for a long time, getting on staff. 2 reasons. One, I wasn't really ready. Younger, I was too busy doing other stuff, didn't really have the maturity to be on board and be on field staff to teach. And it wasn't until probably 2012, 2013 that I got asked to come on board. Best things I ever did, to be around a lot of really, really great people.
We're talking about the Illinois Fire Service Institute.
Yes.
And again, tell me a little bit about that for those who don't know what that is.
We're the State Fire Academy in Champaign, Illinois, University of Illinois. Teach a lot of different classes, fire officer classes, specialty classes, collapse, trench, firefighting classes, whether it's truck ops, engine ops, fast class, confined space, RIT class, just a multitude of different disciplines that are taught there.
You had some stories, some things we're going to get into related to that, but I also want to come around a little bit. Some of the other things you're involved in, you brought a whole set of commemorative coins here.
Oh yeah, just to give you an idea of the different things that I've had fortunate to be involved in.
So tell me about those commemorative coins that you brought in here. What do they represent? Because again, one of them's University of Illinois and the Fire Service Institute. What are the other ones?
The AFFI Honor Guard that I was inducted in 2002. It was started by a Springfield firefighter in 1993. I have been a part of it ever since 2002. And anytime there's an activation, we always try to go anywhere, whether it's in-state and or out, to line of duty deaths for firefighters.
Honor Guard. That's just a great service thing. And then what else?
I'm also part of the Illinois Firefighter Peer Support Team.
And explain that one.
Matt Olson, he originally started it, and it's a mental health issues where firefighters can talk to firefighters, reach out for help, and basically know that, hey, it's okay not to be okay.
That's a huge thing right now. What got you involved with that? I'm asking all these questions about this because to me, you're a second-gen firefighter, and it's a passion now with you, even though you start out wanting to be one. When I talk to you many times, there's a passion in your voice about the fire service and about caring for others, especially even the brother and sisterhood.
I think there's 2 sides of the tape to it. I won't say we're adrenaline junkies, but maybe we are a little bit. But there's that service to others because it's not about you. Yeah. It's not about us. It's about helping the other. We just happen to get paid for it. Now obviously there's volley departments out there. They do it for nothing. When I do trainings, from the BOF class, the new thing that we do, from the academy level on up, people expect three things from us. They expect us to be trained, they expect us to be physically able to do the job, and they expect us to be professional. Plain and simple, that's it. We're problem solvers. That's it. That's it.
And the tough thing is that the job itself does take a toll.
It can, yeah, at times. Yeah, things can be tough from time to time.
What else is over there?
The Fools. So
oh, yeah. Tell me about that one. What?
The Southern Illinois Fools. So the Fools organization was started by some Florida firemen back in 1995, and it's like a brotherhood within a brotherhood. A couple of them were Marines. So it stands for Fraternal Order of Leatherhead Society. And what that organization does is, so if guys and gals aren't getting enough of the brotherhood, sisterhood in the fire department, this is another organization for it, where they can go and serve as instructors to other departments that maybe they could provide training to that can't afford training. Also doing community service within their community or communities, wherever they're from. Kind of disbanded. We were organized in 2012, and again, life gets in the way, and it's hard to keep together sometimes. I know when Chief Bob Shaw, when he retired from DuQuoin, I got involved with teaching a lot, teaching at U of I, teaching at Rend Lake College, and then teaching at Southeastern Illinois College. And a lot of the other guys, Ronnie Raines, who's chief of Carterville, he ended up getting the chief's job, which took a lot of time, and then he's the South or regional rep for the University of Illinois, so that takes up a lot of time too. And it's hard to keep everybody motivated and doing things. You know, we were talking about this earlier. I had just talked with Chief Shaw not too long ago, and he ended up retiring from Warrensburg, Missouri, and he's back here in Illinois, and we talked about getting the band back together, so to speak, and getting people fired back up about it. I've had different people ask me about it, about getting it restarted back up, so that may be in the near future, hopefully. I went and visited some of my buddies up in Chicago, and the Fools organization up there, they, like, one of the things they do is they'll go, is it every month or every 2 months or whatever, and they'll make dinner at the Ronald McDonald House for the families there. And I was fortunate enough I did that one time, and that was a lot of fun. Very, very humbled and very honored to do that.
I want to talk about your department and the reason why I think these things are really important. The brotherhood, the sisterhood is a really big deal. You talk about issues that affect people in the fire service, but I think having that camaraderie, and sometimes you may not get it where you are. I know for the guys that live in the cities, it's kind of like you probably want to get away from it. You're done. But sometimes I think, a lot of places there's not that support. And it gets down to, I think, support among each other.
Oh, that's across the board. That's across the board. And honestly, it doesn't matter whether your department's big or small, you'll have that because you have guys and gals that are into the job, and then you'll have guys and gals that are just on the job, because there's a big difference. And it's some of it's a culture thing, culture change, depending upon what the leadership is at the top. You have those people that are just there, or they're there for the wrong reasons, or they want to be important. I wear this bracelet. Great guy, one of my mentors, and he taught a lot with my father, John McCaslin, who passed away. He was a associate director with the University of Illinois Fire Service Institute. He died in 2019 of a heart attack. And one of his big things is, and that's his quote at the bottom, do something bigger than yourself. And that was one of his mantras. And because it's not about us, it's not about you. Your character and your integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
And I know you kind of bring that in. Metropolis, what is it about Metropolis? Tell me about that department.
We work a 24/72, so we're on 1 off 3. We have, right now, we used to have 3 guys to a shift and a chief. And through different things in the past, we lost people through attrition. We're down to 8 now. We're being run by the police chief as of now. I think that's getting ready to change. So I think things seem to be looking in the better direction. Or here recently, we would work to a shift, but say you and I are on, and I called off sick, or took vacation, you'd be at the firehouse by yourself. That now they're going to start backfilling, so there will always, as of now, be 2 guys on a shift. So we run medical. We did run a BLS engine, and then we got knocked down to first responder because per IDPLH, in order to run a BLS engine, you have to have 2 basics on the rig. So at the time when this happened, so the city wouldn't have to have 2 of us on, they knocked us down to a first responder, which you only have to have 1. So that's changing.
Volunteers, are there those that come behind you guys or with you, and how does that work?
We have 8 full-time guys, and we have 8 paid-on-calls. So usually whenever there's anything that, something substantial, say a vehicle crash, a structure fire, or pretty much anything that the guys they get toned out, and hopefully somebody's coming. If not, a lot of times we'll, hopefully the captain that's on will call for mutual aid. So the County Fire Protection District or, the Brookport or Joppa for manpower. We have called Paducah for assistance 2 times that I know of. I called for 1 years ago for the ladder, for their ladder, because our ladder was actually gone. So we had an apartment fire going on a 2nd story. Or ended up not using them, but we were glad they came.
And that's one of those things, for those who don't know where you are, look across the river and there's Paducah, Kentucky.
Yeah, I get that a lot. They'll ask that, where is Metropolis? Especially the guys up north from years past, whenever I got involved in the honor guard, and then when I got involved in teaching with FSI, they'd be like, where is Metropolis? I'm like, did they not teach geography up north? I mean, what's going on right now? I'm like, we are right on I-24. We're the last exit in Illinois before you cross the Ohio River and get into Paducah, Kentucky. Oh, they're like, wow, Illinois is a long state.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It's huge. It's very long. As far as apparatus, what do you guys have?
So we have a ladder. We have a 103-foot stick, 2 engines. We have a reserve engine, and then we have a 25-foot Boston Whaler with a fire pump on it, with a deck gun. We have 2 brush trucks, command car. I think that's it.
You brought me a coin. Speaking of coins, I didn't realize that you guys actually have a boat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did not even know that. But again, that would make sense because it's right there on the river.
Yeah, well, and we didn't get that until probably 8 years ago, maybe. I want to say we've had it that long. Yeah, and it was actually on a Homeland Security grant in conjunction with law enforcement for the river. So, I mean, it's not a fireboat per se, but we house it and we take care of it.
Yeah, I know you got the interstate, which is 24 and 24. Yeah. You're dealing with issues with that, obviously, and that gets into rescue. What are the kind of calls that you guys are getting during the year?
Knock on wood, it's not been super crazy this year. We have had some pretty bad crashes out on the interstate. I'm honestly, fingers crossed, especially with the construction that's going on right now, right before the I-24 bridge, and back a little further between probably the Big Bay exit and then the bridge. It kind of bottlenecks things down, and we have had some pretty good crashes. Fortunately, no fatalities. And I hope it continues that way, because in the past we have had some pretty brutal fatalities out there on the interstate.
Fire.
There for the longest time, things have slowed down, and it's like ebbs and flows. Actually, we've caught 2 fires this past week. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
What are some of the challenges like Metropolis faces, which I think are pretty typical of many of the departments that I find in this area?
Manpower.
Yeah.
People. We don't have the manpower, especially for say there's 2 guys on today. I'm here, so if we get a good working fire, so I know there's 2 guys right now that are in Mount Vernon for a MABUS hazmat training. So I'm gone, so that's 3 full-time guys that are gone out of town, and there's only 8 full-time. I don't know what the rest of them are doing. So they'd have to pull a box or pull for a second alarm for mutual aid if they get a good working fire. Just for example, it may be even a car crash too on the interstate, especially with the weather the way that it is, to get them in rehab.
And this is not just Metropolis than so many other departments, because that's the thing. This is some of the challenges, and with the manpower here, I know there's a great mutual aid system in this area in Southern Illinois.
Yeah, MABUS.
Yeah, MABUS.
Mutual aid box alarm system. Yeah.
And tell me how that works.
So you have the different box cards, and depending on where you are, your area, you can put different assignments to incoming companies that you want on your box card. You put the call out, and they did get dispatched, and they have an assignment coming in depending on what box it is, what box they are on, where they'll get assigned to.
And the box basically meaning
it's just like a second alarm.
Is a second alarm.
Second alarm, third alarm.
And does that brings in the certain resources that you need?
Yes.
So different things. Being that the big challenge, I know your background in doing a lot of training, what would you like to see evolve over the next couple of years? Metropolis and the departments in the area that are dealing with some of the same issues with manpower and those challenges.
Maybe training on earlier response, earlier mutual aid, especially for departments. And again, I say for some departments, actually all departments, because we're not, even like for Southern Illinois, you look at the region, Carbondale and Marion, they are probably your biggest departments in Southern Illinois, but they even they have to call for help on occasion, whether it's manpower issues or for resources and or extra manpower just to spell their people. If it's hot, you have to rehab your people. You got to take care of your people.
When I moved up here, I was shocked where I live, water doesn't come by through a hydrant.
Yeah.
So is Metropolis, at least, do you guys have at least that resource?
Good water system?
Yeah, good water system.
We do, yeah. We're used to hydrants now. There are some cases where we have had to call the county in for tender shuttles out by the interstate. Probably, we haven't had a fire out there. The one subdivision that's out by the interstate as well doesn't have the best water system. But we've been fortunate where we haven't had to do a lot of that, unlike some other departments like here.
Yeah.
And I know Williamson County does a lot of water shuttle. They're known for that, and they do it very well. Lake of Egypt does the same thing.
Because I think the big thing I've heard here was like, what's a hydrant?
Yeah, because I'm sure you're probably on a pressure system, not a volume system.
We were talking a little bit earlier, and you were talking about two particular incidences, and I would say some of the toughest moments on the job. I could see it in your eyes. I could hear it in your voice. What's interesting to me is that I'm usually expecting someone, well, this happened to me per se. I know you've had those things, but being a trainer, that puts you in a little bit different position working with individuals. So tell me what has been some of the tougher moments and what goes through your head.
Getting involved in the fire service is probably one of the best things and most rewarding things that I've ever done. One of them, aside from having my two girls, because you get to meet so many great people over your career. But the downside of that is the more people that you get to meet, the higher the percentage of you knowing an individual, give me a second, that you may know somebody that is taken too soon.
You were telling me about one of those from your point of view, because you spend time with these individuals and you get to know them.
So tomorrow is the anniversary of Corey Shaw. Now, I did not know Corey, but I know his father very well. I wasn't at that incident.
We're talking about a father-son situation, right?
Yeah. But there was a lot of lessons learned, and this is my opinion. Chief Shaw, he's not to blame for that. He'll take that with him, and he'll tell you that. And myself and different other individuals that know him and love him, we've discussed it. And, it was just one of those things that just happened.
Back me up just a minute. This was a particular fire, and what happened?
This was a fire in Pinckneyville.
Kind of a typical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fire was going pretty well, really well. And I know when DuQuoin got dispatched, they were mutual on their, I think they were on their box card, got called from mutual aid. They came in. I know they took their ladder. Chief Shaw was there. Obviously, the DuQuoin Fire Department guys off duty, paid on-call guys went. He told Corey, he's like, because Corey was just 23, I think. Very ambitious, very, wanting to go, go, like we all do at that age. And I told him, no, this is not one we're going in. We're just going to strand and drown, protect the exposures, so on and so forth. When what Corey had happened to see, he saw a ladder thrown to the building. He was just going to go grab that ladder and pull it away from the building. Well, unfortunately, when he was going to get that ladder, that's when the wall gave way, collapsed, and crushed him. That's when they lost Corey. I couldn't begin to imagine.
Again, it's one of the situations where you wouldn't have seen that coming at that moment.
At that particular moment, no. Now, watch when you watch the video and you look, and different fires. When you watch the so-called fire porn on YouTube and all the different buildings, when the fire is burning at that extent, that eventually there's going to be a collapse. Now, he was just, again, young kid, going to grab that ladder and pull it back so it's not damaged. The unfortunate outcome, yeah.
Tell me about your relation to Corey.
Well, and again, I didn't know Corey, but I know his father real well. I think very highly of Chief Shaw. And I know he's retired from DuQuoin. He was retired for a little bit, and then he took a chief's job in Warrensburg, Missouri, which is maybe 45 minutes east of Kansas City, Missouri. I talked to him just recently, and I found out that he retired. He left there and came back home, so he's back in DuQuoin.
And that's not the only one that was locked out around here. We were mentioning another particular incident.
Cody Van Fossen.
Yeah. And again, this is a kid that you actually, I won't call him a kid, but he's a young man that you trained, you work with. When something happens on the job, if it doesn't happen to you, I think it really strikes other members on the job that hit you deep inside. Tell me about this one.
So we'd had Corey in several different trainings. That kid you'd see him show up at any different Cornerstone class. Had him in a car fire class. I may have had him in something else. And then 2 or 3 weeks prior to the incident in Christopher, we had him in, it was a light and fight in Carbondale at their training where we did the Fire Ops 101.
Right.
Ronnie Raines, who's chief of Carterville, he'd had him in several classes too. He would show up and he was there, and we had him in the training that day, and we had several different things going on, different rotations that day, kind of like what we did with you guys in Fire Ops 101. 3 weeks later, the incident happened, and Ronnie actually was on. He got called on the box. He was in charge of the RIT team for that incident. Very unfortunate incident. It's like I told you earlier, you meet these different people over time, and the more people that you meet, or the percentage goes up for, especially in the business that we're in, for maybe something bad happening. Jake Ringering's another one that I knew, captain on Godfrey. The guy was killed at a fire, mutual aid fire. I met him 6 years ago. One of the assistant chiefs up there had me come up and do some training, teaching for a few classes for him up there at Madison County, and that's when I first met Jake. I think that was, that was 2019 also. Jake Ringering, Cody Van Fossen, and then not fire-related, but then we lost one of our guys in October of 19, Chad Parker.
That's pretty tough. How do you handle that stuff?
Talk about it.
Yeah, talk about it.
Talk about it. Whether it's, I've been pretty fortunate to have a lot of different array of people that I talk about stuff with. Just something as simple, because there's a lot of people that'll compartmentalize it and they'll tuck it away and not talk about it, and it builds up, and it turns into other stuff. By just having a conversation about it relieves that pressure. It's that simple. Now there may be some times, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, and I know of other people that's happened to, that it works. And maybe depending upon the circumstances or whatever it is, there may have to be another level of help that you receive, because it's maybe really eating at a person. Everybody's different, but as long as, if you have a conversation, man, it lets it out. You can relate to it. Because after the incident with Cody, Ronnie and I, this is harder than I thought.
That's okay.
Ronnie and I had several conversations about that, because he and I don't even mean to speak for him, but it affected him greatly. But just by having a conversation about it. And he, we're pretty tight with a lot of different people, especially some of the ones we teach with. And guys reached out and kept tabs and talked about it and talked it out. And I think that helped a lot. I know it did.
Experiences with it, I know many others. I was talking with my son, many have heard. He talked about, I asked him how many people or how many firefighters he's worked with that have taken their own lives. And in his short time, which has now been 10 years, but he's had 6 that took their lives.
I know one in particular.
Yeah.
I had him as a student several times. I actually met that kid when he was a good friend of mine. After he left the Institute, his first chief job was in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. And that's when I first met his dad, who just recently retired, I think last year, as the assistant chief of Madison, which was his son. I kept tabs with him when he first told me that he was getting hired and going to Memphis, and we'd text quite a bit, and he'd shoot me pictures and video on Snapchat, which hell, the only reason I ended up with Snapchat was because of my girls, and they wouldn't even add me. so there was that, and then when I first got the news about him, I was absolutely devastated, because I mean, here you have a kid had the world by the cojones, and the plan was his dad was going to retire, and they were going to end up moving down to Memphis, and right, because he had a street glide, and because we'd talk bikes, guys, I have a street glide, and I just that was really tough. And I know that they've had others, but that's the one that because I knew that kid personally, and that was tough. That was tough. I hated it for his family.
There's one thing when we go through it, but then we also go through the pain with everybody else. You have 30 years. You kind of have a viewpoint. You're second generation, you're second gen in the fire service, so you kind of know. This kind of comes with the territory. If you were talking to somebody right now that is really dealing with some tough stuff, not able to handle it, something happened to somebody else, they can't handle it, and you were talking about getting more help.
Oh, there's a lot of different things that the Illinois Firefighter Support team. There's Rosecrans. There's several different organizations. There's React.
But the whole point is to get professional help, right?
Yeah. And again, if you don't, watch your people. Keep tabs on one another. If somebody's doesn't seem right, then bug them. If you care about them, it doesn't matter if you piss them off. Just make sure they're okay. And if they're not okay, then get them some help. Make them talk. And if they're not going to talk to you, then get them to talk to somebody else. Because it is a thing, because there for a long time it was a stigma. Well, you don't, whatever. You don't need to talk to anybody. Toughen up, kid. Blah blah blah. Which that only goes so far, especially in this day and age. Now that it's being talked about. I mean, it's okay not to be okay. It's not a bravado thing. Because I mean, if you don't let things bother you, or if things don't bother you, then you may be wired a little different.
Or you could be hiding something that just hasn't come out of the bottle yet.
That could be too, and then when it does, it's probably not going to be a good thing.
You guys deal with that a little bit in training, or is that changing slowly?
A lot of the classes that we do and through the university, they started the resiliency program, and there's always an hour portion that we do depending on what the class is, and you can do even like a 4-hour class, or it could even go longer. Some of those are more in depth, and we have workbooks where it makes people have to write things down and actually open your mouth and speak about things. You don't necessarily have to, but it's that outlet there, that gauge to maybe prompt people to want to maybe open up. And that's not always the case, and it doesn't have to be right then. But as long as it gets people to thinking, and you don't have to talk to somebody else, just get it out. And that is just like a pressure relief valve, and it helps. It's like all that weight's lifted off your shoulder. I've had that told to me by different people, that just simply having a conversation about something is just such a relief, and it's a release. So I know it's helped me with stuff before. But again, everybody's different.
Anything with you that you've had to deal with that has been a challenge?
Being laid up. So when I got hurt at a fire, years ago, and I never missed any time. I ended up with a herniated disc in my neck, tore my rotator in my shoulder.
Wow.
And I just continued to work, but I was always I hurt. And it wasn't until maybe 2 years after that I ended up getting surgery. Being laid up was difficult for me because I couldn't be on the job, and I couldn't teach, I couldn't be around. Fell into a depression, and I ended up having to take medicine just being laid up because I couldn't do what I wanted to do, couldn't be involved in the fire service. I had to just bide my time and wait, and that was tough for me to be away from that.
That's amazing. Is that, again, part of your second gen thing?
I don't know.
The drive, is it, and again, is it the love for the job and then your thing wanting to help people? Yeah.
Oh, love the job. Yeah, love the job. Love the job. Love the individuals that are into the job I'm around, that I'm able to teach with my mentors. Eddie Enright, who's a retired chief from the city of Chicago, who he's been retired for many years. I think he's my dad's age. One of the things he says when he gives presentations, I mean, he talks about, he's not standing up there alone. There's all these people beside him that he has with him. And I think that's, all his mentors and people that he came up with, that he looked up to and revered like many of us do. Same way here. You're talking about different rescues and stuff. There was 2 kids that fell in the ice through the trout pond out at Fort Massac. They were walking across the ice, and the sister fell in. I can't even remember how old they were. And then the brother went in after her, and he fell through. And it was fortunate that they walked from the one side instead of the opposite side, because it was deeper on the other side. And then the third, because there was three kids, the girl, she went and called for help. The call came out, and myself and Keith Davis, an EMA director for Metropolis. He was a paid-on-call fireman at the time. We got there first. As I'm looking at the kids, and I'm just like zoomed in, and he's like, "What are we going to do, Bob?" And I knew the guys were coming, so I took my stuff out of my pocket and just started going into the water. By the time I got up to my hands were so cold, I had to break the ice with my elbows. But I knew Keith was at the edge of the water with me. I got to him and then brought him out. They were about up to their shoulders in the water. But if they would have come from the other side, they would have been under the water. So it ended up being a good outcome. I ended up with strep throat after that. Man. I know when they got to the hospital, the kid's core temperature was like 95. So I mean, they weren't in the water like super long.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cold. It was cold. And then we didn't have ice suits then. We have them now. We just got them recently, actually. What they call the Gumby suits.
Yeah. And that's being right there on the river too. Is that where that was?
No, it was at Fort Massac.
Okay.
At the trout pond that they have. Yeah. Yeah, and there was another fire that we had. It was like 2 blocks down from my house. Actually, I was off duty. The kids got out, but you could hear the mother screaming in the house, and we just were sitting there waiting on the engine to come. We got in, made a knock, ended up closing the bedroom door. Eventually getting her out. She didn't survive. I've always replayed that in my mind, rethinking, well, what could I have done different? What could I have done? What could we have done better? As it worked out, trying to get the bedroom window open, and it reminds me of, it was, because as soon as I was trying to smash it, it wasn't going. And I'm like, what is going on here? Well, it was like windows, like on a factory. They were like steel J-channel. The entire window casing was all metal. We ended up having to use the cutters, cut the window away in order to get her out. Yeah, those are kind of 2 that stick out in my mind. There was one, it was actually out in the county, because I used to run with the county quite a bit when I first got on in Metropolis. There was a 17-year-old boy out in the county that was killed in a house fire. I ended up crawling over the top of him. I thought it was furniture. After everything, because we didn't have ticks at the time, learning that it was a body, it was him.
These are the things that you say do replay in your mind.
Sometimes, not all the time. Yeah, but you different things may hit you where you think about a time when, well, this happened or that happened or this particular rescue or vehicle crashes. Some of those are pretty notable that you remember. You just remember the smells and the looks. One comes to mind. Another one out just outside the county. It was a head-on and this truck was just totally involved, gone, and you could see the body partially. This gentleman was face down. His body was badly burnt. When we picked him up to put him in the body bag, his face was preserved because it was in the soft mud, soft dirt. That was just one. We had a head-on with that involved maybe 3 vehicles. I think 5 were killed. There was only 1 survivor. That was a pretty horrific crash. The one, I always call it northbound, southbound, but it's east and west on I-24 down by us. One of the vehicles heading to Paducah crossed the median. I don't know if they fell asleep or what happened. Hit another vehicle head on, and then involved another vehicle. There was only 1 survivor out of it.
Memories. They don't teach you this, right?
Not back then, no, because you didn't talk about stuff like that as far as like how to handle different situations, or whereas now, like you were talking about earlier about the resiliency program and the different mental health aspects of the job.
Advice, what would you give to newbies and people in the fire service?
Be a sponge. If you have enough common sense about you, you'll know the senior people to listen to and the ones that you maybe should shy away from. You'll know people that are in it for the right reasons and are always doing the right thing. You'll figure those things out along the way. Always be a student of the game. I look at myself. I took FAE, which is Fire Apparatus Engineer. One of the worst classes I've ever taken. I say that because I hate math. And one of the best classes I've ever taken, and got a lot out of it. And I was the oldest in the class. Probably had 5 or 6 students that I taught in Fire Academy, and this one young man, he's like, Instructor Williams. And I'm like, time out. First off, we're not in academy anymore. It's Bobby. I said, you may continue, jokingly. He said, is it weird for you to be in class with us? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're an instructor. I'm like, here's the deal. I should have had this class like 26 years ago as an engineer, but it wasn't a priority back then. I said, to me, you should always be training, always be doing stuff. As long as you're on the job, you always have to be a student of the game because everything's always changing. Whether it's building, construction, tactics, whatever. We're always trying to improve on things, and if you're not keeping up with that, then you need to put your papers in and go do something else, especially for a job that can kill you in a second. I didn't tell him I feel old being in here with all you young kids, but I said, no, it recharges my batteries, and I'm keeping up with the times. I get to listen to the new blood coming in, and what their thoughts are, because I was you years ago. It's a circle.
That's good stuff. Well, Bobby Williams, Metropolis Fire Department, 2nd Gen, passion on the job there. Appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tom.
Bobby Williams, 2nd Gen, and that's our storyline. Just a reminder, Emergency FD Storyline is on various podcast platforms like Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, and Alexa, Pandora, Stitcher, just to name a few. Be sure to subscribe and follow and be notified when our next podcast is available, or just to listen to a past podcast. And by the way, tell others about Emergency FD Storyline. Pass the word. Be sure to check out our website, emergencyfd.com. That's emergencyfd.com. And while you're there, you can help support the production of this podcast with a donation of any amount. Just click on that donate button on the website. And if you would like to contact Emergency FD Storyline with comments, or to suggest a story or a subject for an upcoming podcast, email us. Here's our address, storyline@emergencyfd.com. That's storyline@emergencyfd.com. I'm Tom Mann, and I want to thank you for listening. There are many stories coming on Emergency FD Storyline. Join us.